Mayor live from Palm Beach, Florida, where we have been for a bit, and just a stone's throw from Mar-a-Lago. So today ended the presentation of the evidence in probably the most unjust trial that I can remember in American history. Now, I'm sure there were others, in the last century or the century before that. But this pretended, they probably didn't even pretend to, this pretended to be a trial covered under New York law with something called the New York State Supreme Court Justice in charge. Of course, a New York State Supreme Court Justice from Manhattan is like a Democratic Party hack in charge. And that's the way it was conducted. The rules of evidence and the rules of the Constitution went out the window completely, and we presented to the world America as a country that carries on fascist-like trials. The administration of the current president was seeking to put in jail his major opponent, who is leading him quite handily right now, to avoid having to run against him at the polls. The hand-picked lawyer was just a short while ago the ruling party's number 3 person in the Justice Department. Of course, the crooked press doesn't point that out. They make it appear as if the case is being brought and by an overzealous, completely incompetent prosecutor named Bragg, who never stood up in court, never said anything, never did anything, never questioned anybody. I don't know if he knows how to, frankly. But in any event, the case was conducted by Biden's lawyer, a guy who had just come out of the Justice Department and sent here for the purpose of persecuting Trump. The case was absurd. It was a case that was barred by the statute of limitations with regard to the initial part of the case, the key part of the case, which was allegedly a false entry into a business record, which carries a sentence of 11 months and is a misdemeanor. Hardly the kind of thing that you would waste your time on in a city that has people leaving by large numbers because of crime, people being knocked on the subway, bashed in the head, with something like well over 100,000 unknown illegals that could have backgrounds from coming out of madhouses to just being regular people. We don't know. They weren't vetted. They were invited here by Biden. They commit crimes, it seems, freely, and they terrorize certain neighborhoods of New York. Rather than spending the time on that, the Bragg people, with the help of Biden and with the Biden lawyer conducting the trial, spent enormous resources on this trial, while out in the streets of New Yorkers are getting banged around by the criminals that Bragg lets out every day. The case was a travesty. It didn't even bother to charge a crime. The underlying crime is barred by the statute of limitations unless it's in pursuance of a felony. It said it was in pursuance of a felony, but it never charged the felony. Well, that's not charging a crime under any form of due process, even applicable to crooked Democratic New York City. They never picked the felony that Trump allegedly was pursuing. We think it's a campaign finance violation. Unfortunate part of that is that's a federal offense. Hard to figure out how Bragg gets the ability to charge a federal offense. Hard to figure out how he can charge it when the federal government decided not to charge it, both in Washington and the Southern District of New York. His predecessor decided not to charge it. He decided not to charge it until Biden, took over and sent his hand-picked guy down here to prosecute. So this is a political case through and through. It's a distortion of our system. And finally, when you look at it, the case should be a directed verdict of acquittal. The last witness for the state was maybe the current second biggest liar in America. The biggest liar, of course, is the president. He never misses a day. But this guy, just for the heck of it, was caught not only in a lie, but in confessing a major crime at the end of his testimony. He stole money from the Trump organization, $60,000. That's a major felony in New York. It's much more serious than the crime charged against Trump, which they haven't proved. Instead of prosecuting Trump, they should be prosecuting Cohen. He did a $60,000 larceny. He stole from the Trump organization. Just because it's a Trump organization doesn't mean you can steal from it. Just because everybody hates Trump, it doesn't mean you can steal from his business. And just because people in New York hate Trump doesn't mean you can try him like we're the Soviet Union. He has a right to know what he's charged with. He wasn't told. Finally, the false statement is a truthful statement. When Cohen got finished with his testimony, which was littered with lie after lie after lie, he did say one thing. He said that this payment was not just $135,000 for the so-called payment to settle the case. It was altogether well over $400,000 for an assorted group of things. So when the bookkeeper went to enter it as a legal expense, that's a perfectly truthful statement. I mean, there's no way that the jury could conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that that was a false statement. That's why if Mershon were even partially an honest judge and not completely in the clutches of the Democratic organization, he would enter a verdict of not guilty because the evidence equals not guilty. The very statement they charged as false, you can actually prove the negative here is actually true. 5 items, including the money he stole, but under the guise of legal expenses. And the accountant wrote legal expenses. This is a tragedy beyond tragedies. And then the last witness, Robert Costello. Well, first of all, the expert witness wasn't allowed to testify that this was not a campaign contribution, although Cohen was allowed to testify that it was. That's, you need any more to see how horribly prejudiced the judge was? Well, of course, the judge should have recused himself. He donated money to Biden. That's against the judicial rules, and he wasn't even punished for it. It's so serious against the judicial rules, and he didn't recuse himself. His daughter, as we speak, is making money off this case and supporting people who hate Trump. He has donated to the Stop Trump movement. How can you sit as a fair judge in a case in which you donated even a penny to the Stop Trump movement, and you're going to preside over Trump's trial? Don't you get it? Even if you're not a Republican, even if you're not a Trump, don't you get how unfair that is and what a terrible precedent that sets? Costello's testimony, which was partially allowed but interrupted constantly by the judge, basically said that Cohen had no incriminating evidence against Trump when there was an opportunity to offer it, and was very, very bitter when, one, he didn't get the pardon that he asked for, which he lied about under oath before the House committee, and number two, particularly when he didn't get the job that he wanted, which he also lied about before the House committee. And from that point on, he became very embittered. Although he was a pretty disloyal rat even before that, because even as Trump's lawyer, he he did a tape of a recording with him, which I listened to very, very carefully, where he cut out just at the point in which Trump was giving exculpatory information. Just cut it right off when Trump was explaining that he didn't want this done. Just cut it right off. He claims it went out on its own. Of course you can't believe him. And then the judge obviously seems to be getting really touchy. But I guess if you're been exposed as such a dishonest, dishonorable judge, and if you know that you are now the poster boy for dishonest judges, Merchan, with that silly-looking grin on his face, has taken over for Engelmoron as the prototype of the dishonest judge that we have to all fear in America, and who is embarrassing this country. He got kind of nervous and thought that Costello was giving him dirty looks or was staring at him. I really would like to have seen that, because in that courtroom, the judge sits on a big bench and the witness sits all the way down there. So instead of looking at the lawyer, asking him the questions, Costello would have to have turned around and turned his back on the lawyer and the jury and just looked at the judge. Maybe the judge is seeing things. You know, when you get as dishonest like that, maybe he's got some kind of conscience that's coming up and reminding him he went to law school and he's conducting a trial like he was, in Soviet Russia, East Berlin, Nazi Germany, all the places where they don't give you a fair trial. There's no chance the jury will acquit. Believe me, these people are Trump derangement syndrome. The serious case, there is a chance of a hung jury. And there is no chance that Merchan will do the honest and decent thing. None. He's owned. You think he's going to make that decision? That decision is made by the leader of the Democrat Party that put him there and kept him an acting judge for 22, 23 years. So this is like a dog that doesn't get taken out of a shelter for 23 years. I mean, nobody wants him. He's an acting Supreme Court justice. He should stop acting. He don't know what the hell he's doing. Michael Cohen fully confessed to stealing 60 grand from his ex-boss. Of course, with perfect impunity, knowing that the crooked district attorney Bragg, paid for and supervised by George Soros, isn't going to prosecute him. Trump is getting prosecuted for an accountant putting down what turns out to be a correct description of the group of payments. And this guy is getting away with stealing 60 grand. On top of 40 perjuries. Welcome to the democratic dictatorship of New York City. I've lived under it, for most of my life, except when I was mayor. Very, very sad. And that's what gives New York no hope. In order to reform the city, you have to be independent of the political forces that create the downfall of the city. And that's why Adams makes big promises and can't follow through. Because he's got an instinct as to what the right thing is. But then politically, he can't deliver, like changing the bail laws that were put there by Cuomo and are being upheld by the progressives in the state legislature. They control him. He doesn't control them, and they control the city for that purpose. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. And if I put my name on something, I truly believe in it. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to something I'm incredibly proud of. My own brand of organic specialty coffee, Rudy Coffee. Believe me when I say it's the best coffee you'll ever try. It's smooth, rich, chocolatey, and gentle on your stomach. It's so good, I even recommend drinking it black. It comes in 3 varieties, including what I promise is the best decaf you'll ever have. You can order now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting Rudy.coffee. By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause, the cause of truth, justice, and American democracy. You'll also be supporting the Call to Action nonprofit, which is devoted to helping veterans and first responders, so you can make a difference and taste the difference by ordering today at Rudy.coffee. Welcome back to America's Mayor Live. Never ceases to amaze me how much the Biden people hate America. I used to say, or I did say one time, quite some time ago, when Obama was president, that it was very odd. He never expressed any love for America. Gosh, was I off? They don't just not love America; they hate America. Just think of the speech that Biden made this weekend at Morehouse State University, Black College. All he did was talk about all the terrible things that are happening to blacks in America, which actually, like black murder, which really is black on black murder, Joe. I don't know how you can attribute that to white supremacy when in my city of New York, where I know the statistics really well, 7 out of 10 of the people killed every year are black, and 7.5 to 8 out of 10 who do the shooting are black. Whites account for about 8% of the shooters and 12% of the victims. So that would run pretty much true of every one of your Democrat-controlled cities where you allow poor blacks to get slaughtered without doing much about it. In fact, under you, records have been set. But we all know you at heart you're a racist, Joe. No one would have given the speech that you gave at Morehouse other than a racist. I mean, you don't really realize how much blacks have accomplished. I mean, who would have said something as idiotic as Obama was the first clean black president? What's a dirty black presidential candidate? What is it to say, I don't want my children to go to school in the jungle? Well, often is the N-word thrown around show in your house, huh? Not mine. That speech at Morehouse was, it was just a horrible, horrible speech. You basically presented to these very, very accomplished young men and women that blacks are victims. They're basically victims, and they're not as well-positioned, well-educated as whites. Well, there are a hell of a lot of blacks that are. A hell of a lot of whites that aren't well-positioned and well-educated. You were talking to the wrong people, too. Instead of congratulating them on what they achieved and graduating from college and giving them a sense of the unlimited, which is ahead of them, you painted the picture of a country that you describe as systemically racist. Well, that's in your head, Mr. Racist. This country is not systemically racist. This country has strains of racism and works hard every day at eliminating that and reducing it. It worked real hard on reducing it over a period of time, too, and made great strides. And what about talking about the heroism of blacks and whites that fought side by side to free the blacks during the Civil War? What about all the white people that gave up their lives to free the blacks? Did you ever look at the positive parts of America? The reasons why people shouldn't burn flags. The reason why you should be smart enough to stand against Black Lives Matter, even back then when you used to bow down to them. When one of their first things is to break up the family of husband and wife and get the husband out of the house and take over the kid at 2. You're not smart enough to know that that comes from Marx, because you probably couldn't read and understand Marx, but you must have heard about him somewhere along the way, in between, getting half of that money that Hunter gives you and meeting all of Hunter's friends. Someone must have told you a little bit about Karl Marx. But that speech at Morehouse, and then of course you had to take a shot at Israel, right? You had to see if you could build up the anti-Semitism that exists on the campus by explaining that Israel better just stop it in Palestine, as if they're morally equivalent to the Palestinian Authority that wants to kill all Jews and is taught to kill Americans. Death to Americans follows right after death to Israel. I don't know. You've killed a lot of Americans too, so maybe it doesn't bother you. Sure bothers me. The whole way in which you presented that is probably a great summation of the sickness that you have imposed on this country, the sickness of racism. You've made it worse than it's been in decades because of your own hatred, your own small-mindedness, your own bitterness. Maybe you learned some of that from the Ku Klux Klan people you used to hang out with. I don't know. Really, really, really pathetic to see that in a president. In Iran, the butcher of Tehran died in a plane crash along with his number one assistant or cabinet member. This guy was a mass murderer, well-documented mass murderer. Back in 1988, he led a group of judges and prosecutors that prosecuted well over 120 and murdered well over 120,000 people, probably giving them some form of a show trial where there were no rules of evidence, or like we're starting to do. He got the reputation back then of being the butcher of Tehran. He then remained in government doing all kinds of terrible things, getting people killed, and then was brought back by the Ayatollah because he wanted to toughen up his relations with the United States. He wanted to make a real burst forward in becoming a nuclear power. And he wanted to organize these groups of disparate terrorist groups as agents of Iran, which he's done a great job of. Look at the way they've attacked us now continuously since October 7. We've responded 1 or 2 times to very little effect. And Iran is just killing us and sending our soldiers to the hospital and destroying American bases. And America is making sure they get enough money so they can conduct the war. One of the biggest contributors to Iranian terrorism, personally, is Obama and Biden. Obama used to do it in cash. I mean, and the coup de grace, of course, was when Raisi died. A number of women in Iran celebrated, brave women, because he was the one that led the crackdown on women and men when they protested the killing of Marsha Amini, who was killed because she had a little hair showing. It brought about very, very big protests, and the mass murderer of Tehran came forward and slaughtered a lot of them just recently. And you sent Iran a condolence message. I don't know. You think we did that when Hitler died? You think we sent a condolence message to Germany? Too bad, Our heart goes out to his family. And what the hell is wrong with you and your State Department? It's hard to accept that maybe he does work for the other side. Who the hell would send a condolence message to a mass murderer? There is no doubt this guy has killed over 100,000 people. But even if he killed 10,000, and some of them Americans, the people you're supposed to be protecting, although you're getting them killed needlessly, a lot, particularly with the open borders and the fentanyl and Afghanistan. What about the people of Ukraine? You got a couple 100,000 of those killed because Putin would never have invaded under America with a real man as a president, or certainly with Trump as a president. But you send a condolence message to Ibrahim Raisi? Isn't there anybody in the White House or in the State Department that says, no, 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 we generally don't send condolence messages to mass murderers and dictators and tyrants, people who have American blood on their hand? You gotta be, you're either completely out of your mind or you are really an enemy of the United States. Right? Send a condolence message to a mass murderer. Also, the International Court of Justice has issued warrants for the arrest of Bibi Netanyahu and his defense secretary, as well as some Hamas people. We're going to do something about that, like make sure they get no funds of any kind at all. I don't know if you slip money to them. Trump made sure that none got to them. We do not belong to the International Court of Justice, nor does Israel. So their actions with regard to Israel are completely illegal. But what does that matter? Our courts do totally illegal things now that fit getting you reelected. I guess the International Court of Justice can just decide it's going to assert jurisdiction. We got jurisdiction, even though the country never signed the treaty and isn't part of it. What do you think is going to happen if they try to go arrest Bibi Netanyahu? What do you think the IDF is going to do to them if they try to go arrest Bibi Netanyahu when he's got a war going on? I don't know. My money would be on the IDF protecting Bibi, and they'd be right because the International Court of Justice has no legal right to charge him with anything. Also, the charges are totally false. The biggest supporters of this, the top donors, are Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, and France. Maybe we should talk to them and say, "Hey, friends, come on, cut it out. This is a complete kangaroo court, and I know we can't talk about kangaroo courts because we got plenty of them, but we're trying very, very hard to stop that." Do you know that George Clooney's wife is one of the lawyers that is helping to put together this terrorist case on Netanyahu? Netanyahu is not doing anything unusual in the conduct of this war. If anything, he's conducting it probably in the most civilized way to protect civilians that has ever been the case. So, I mean, I don't know who the hell his wife is, but it's just another one of the Hollywood. They must give them something. They must really give them something. I mean, there's so many things that have to be done. They must absolutely give them something. Well, we'll be back very shortly, and I'll tell you as illegal aliens flood into Arizona and make it chaotic, the prosecutors are worried about electors and prosecuting people who put up alternative electors in the 2020 election, never trying to fool anybody. And they don't have time for the massive number of criminals that their president, because all Democrats doing it, is letting into Arizona and beating the hell out of the people of Arizona. But they have time to waste tremendous resources sending people all over the country to arrest people who put up an alternative set of electors for Arizona, who could have been selected had the choice been made that there was an irregularity in the vote and Trump had won. Not unlike what happened in the 1960s when Nixon and Kennedy did the same thing. Now, if they think that that's worth spending time on, when their people are getting beaten, robbed, their property is being taken, and people are coming over the border because Texas is securing the border, and the left-wing criminally sympathetic governor of Arizona and an attorney general that's worse seem to think that they should be doing vindictive things to try and block Trump from being president. Or what are they? They're trying to get in on the action. Basically, it's a cut and paste of what everybody else has done, so they can say, see, we tried to block Trump too. We tried to block Trump too. Meanwhile, you look out the street and people getting banged over the head by illegal immigrants that their president are letting in, and they're doing nothing about. So we'll be right back, and we'll tell you a little about that.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live. Don't forget, MyPillow.com. And get a couple of those patriotic pillows. They're right behind the Rudy Coffee there. And don't forget, sign up so that you can get your Rudy Coffee when it hits the market at the beginning of June. If you wait until June, there'll probably be a backup. The coffee's great. I've sampled it all, worked on it. I've been sort of messing around with blending different types of coffee now for 5 or 6 years. And there's a morning blend, there's a bold blend, and there's a decaffeinated blend that has no additives and no chemicals, because a lot of decaffeinated has got a lot of crap in it. This is done by a water process. The whole process is free of any preservatives or additives. And it's the very, very, very best beans that you can get, Arabica, rather than Robusto. Absolutely no Robusto. All high-quality beans.
Which one's your favorite, Mayor? Of
the bold.
The bold.
Yeah. I mean, in the morning, I have the morning coffee. I could have the bold in the morning as well. But I kind of like to start off a little milder, and the morning coffee isn't mild. It's a good, strong morning coffee, and then build up to it, because if you just keep having bold, I think you get too used to it. You might as well keep varying it. So a poll was taken, Ted.
That's right.
A poll was taken on a VP candidate.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
A poll. I don't think polls are very useful for VP candidates because they do get selected by one person. Yeah. And that's what might be valuable is a poll where you ran the candidate with the VP candidate, right? Like Trump is leading Biden. We'll go over the polls in a little while, but Trump is leading Biden one general poll by 5%, right? So now put one person with him and then another person with him and see if it changes. Or and do the same thing for Biden if you want. I mean, I think if you put anybody in place of Harris, he goes up, right? I mean, Harris has got to be pulling him down. Although maybe they're both in the same place. They're both in the cellar. Well, the two that came out on this poll by far, way ahead of everybody else. Guess.
Carson and Vivek.
DeSantis and Scott.
Wow, I would have thought.
And DeSantis by a fairly decent margin over Scott. But Scott,
the DeSantis paid for a poll.
1,600 voters between May 15 and
who did the poll
to 16.
Who's behind this? I'm going to look this up right now.
And among Republicans, he was the choice of 23% of the Republicans.
So what do you think of that?
I think it's probably right. I think somebody was making the argument that that he should go get Nikki Haley as a candidate because she'd bring in the vote that he needed. But I don't think the party wants Nikki Haley. I would like to see where she is on this poll. I only have the two top candidates on the poll. But it's, according to this discussion this morning that the so-called political expert was having, President Trump should go beg Nikki Haley to join him. I don't know if she wouldn't hurt the ticket. She went way too far, way too far. Now, there is always the possibility that the Democrats are 50-50 on Biden, and this debate is a tryout because it's a strange debate being done before the primary. I mean, I could see a strategy for it where they're afraid of him debating, have him debate now, and get it over with. They can always back out of the one in September if they have to.
And by September, the one in June, no matter what happens, won't really matter, right? I mean, unless he falls over.
On the other hand, I think exposing him to a debate anytime, because you can't control what he can't control what he does. It could, I mean, the argument or the theory that it's a tryout to see if he can handle running is, I think, as good as any other. And the guy that they would put in probably is Newsom. Well, Newsom just shot himself in the foot by imposing a tax, much heavier tax on the gross margins of all the refineries in California. So you say, okay, well, the people in California who remain there are used to the heavy taxes, and he's losing people at a record clip anyway. So what does it matter if he loses a few more? I don't know who then going to end up paying the taxes like in New York. But here's the problem. California supplies 90% of the gasoline for Nevada and for Arizona. And this is happening right now. And people in Arizona and Nevada are going to see their gasoline bill go up. Nothing predicts presidential voting more than gasoline bills. This is going to kill Biden in both the places. Now, Trump has a massive lead in Nevada anyway, and a small lead in Arizona. But those gas prices go up. Boom, bam. And I think it pretty much negates Newsom as the candidate, just what you need to be, a guy who is an expert on knowing how to raise gasoline prices for president, to follow a guy who got pretty close to record prices. We got just keep that in mind if Mr. Slick Hair gets elected, gets nominated, if he gets put in. It'd be interesting to see what they pump Biden up with. I really would take Trump seriously that he should be drug tested. In fact, I'd begin, since he refused to be drug tested, I'd begin by telling him, you said you were going to have the most transparent administration. How about being transparent about the drugs that you took? You wouldn't take a test. How about if you tell us? Because you look very different at different times, Joe. Half the time you look like the Walking Dead. The other half the time your eyes are so wide open, it looks like you're taking stuff from your son. So which is it? I don't know. They're going to have to give him something. And of course, they're not going to agree. No way are they going to agree to a drug test, right, Ted? So the Border Patrol put out some statistics. I don't know if it's the Border Patrol or a rump group. 75% of the people that get interviewed with very little vetting, right?
Right.
Are admitted right away. Short interview, admitted, and put on parole anywhere from a year to 5. In other words, they don't have to come back for a year to 5 years, which means they're admitted. That's not the group that are the gotaways. That's the group that they see, but they can't identify at all. And then there are the people they don't see and obviously can't identify at all. So we know that the people that come in and we let through and the gotaways have gotten us up to about 6 to 8 million illegal aliens. But we have no idea what we never saw them group is. And it has to be very, very large because the cartels have control of the border. And that's where they're going to bring in large numbers of their, let's call it, high-value illegals. The ones bringing in fentanyl, for example, for fear that they might be caught. Some are caught, but a lot aren't. Or the Chinese who might pay heavy money to get their spies in. Although the Chinese are only asked 4 questions at the border. So I would imagine they're all trained to deny their spies, right? Are you a Chinese spy?
No.
No. How do you run a government more stupidly than Biden does? Or more in a way that's anti the best interests of the people of this country? By letting all those people in without being checked. So that this person gets sent to live next to you, they have no idea who he is. I mean, we know that Venezuela emptied out its prisons, its jails, and its criminals because they're getting record crime reductions. I had to do it the honest way. They're doing it by just sending them all to America. I mean, those people that used to be in the Venezuelan prisons and insane asylums and were committing crimes on the streets of Caracas are now hanging out in New York, Washington, Chicago, and all over Texas. Although Abbott's doing a good job of getting them out of Texas, isn't he? God bless you, Abbott. Now, there's for me a possible vice presidential pick, Ted. What a tough guy. If it wasn't for Abbott, we would not really be as serious. You know, the biggest issue in New Hampshire is illegal alien immigration. I mean, that's pretty far away, although they do get a little bit there from the north, and Vermont does. But the biggest issue in a lot of these states that are inland states and not border states are the illegal aliens that Biden has helped to come in and invited in the millions. And it really was amazing to me how much time they're taking on this ridiculous Me Too case in Arizona. You know, they took, as you know, Ted, they took 2.5 weeks to find me, having put out articles saying they couldn't find me, even though I announced every day.
Right here on the show.
I'm in Palm Beach, I'm in Miami, then they finally, after I virtually gave them the address of where the party was, they, at the very end of the party, they served me, but I still didn't have the indictment. They just gave me a summons. Today, I called up to be arraigned. They did it virtually, but very angry at me because they say I evaded. I didn't evade service.
Not once.
I was right here. But in any event, they set a $10,000 bond, even though we let people who beat up old ladies go out on no bond. And second, they've got like a hell of a lot of DAs working on this. People calling in, organizing people to come in and get fingerprinted. Meanwhile, they've got a crisis of vast proportions because the illegals that were coming in freely in Texas, Abbott is beginning to get control of. And I just read an article 2 days ago on how much of it has switched to Arizona. But you know that the governor of Arizona and the attorney general are progressives, which means they love illegal aliens. So they're letting them come in like crazy and put no resources into it and spending their resources instead on the fifth major indictment of Trump people. I mean, like, we really need this? What do you want to put me in jail until I'm 195? But, you're charging me with all the same stuff in Georgia. And you're charging Mark Meadows with all the same stuff there, and you're charging Professor Eastman, and you're charging all those people who are completely innocent. Meanwhile, you're letting the illegal aliens, you're virtually letting them in. And you're taking these resources away from protecting your people. It's all politics, isn't it? No. It's all power and money, isn't it? That's what it is. Well, it's not working with Trump, I'll tell you. It's not working. The more you prosecute him, the better he does. Right now, what is described as the Biden-Bragg Colangelo prosecution. Colangelo is the Biden guy that was sent there to prosecute the case. Trump holds a lead nationally of 47-43, and he's ahead in every one of the swing states, which happened to be the states that were stolen from him last time. Funny that he's ahead in all those states, right? And that he was ahead in all those states when they stopped counting, and then they kept counting, and it all turned around. And now they have lost 375,000 of the paper ballots in Georgia. Could they be the phony paper ballots? No. Democrats wouldn't do that. Well, a majority of voters want the political prosecutions of Trump to stop, but there still are bloodthirsty, crooked attorney generals like the one in Arizona that want to go forward with cases so they can get their name on the scoreboard. I think they're going to get their name on the wall of dishonor, and maybe someday will come along and disbar them for being unethical and dishonest lawyers. 66% of voters believe that politics has played a role in the indictments of President Trump. I don't know what's wrong with the rest of them, but 66% is a big number. 59% of all voters say that Joe Biden has played a role in the indictments of President Trump. I don't know why it isn't 100%. So the conclusion is that these are, by a very, very large majority of Americans, that this is a misuse of the criminal justice system, that this is a banana republic tactic of prosecuting your opponent. I love to tell the story about Venezuela because Venezuela has found a way to clean out all its criminals and send it to New York and Chicago and Florida or whatever. But we also, because Biden likes to do business with communist and terrorist countries, he stopped our drilling. We were energy independent. He made us dependent again. So he had to buy oil from Venezuela because he doesn't want to see the price of gasoline, keep going up, although it's up by about 40%. Even though it went down a little, it's up by about 40% over Trump, and it's going to continue to go up. But he went and he wanted to buy gasoline from a communist country, Venezuela. But there are sanctions, and the sanctions require that Venezuela have a free and fair election. So Maduro looked him in the eye and knew what he meant by free and fair election. He said, yes, we'll have a free and fair election. And he got his money, started sending the oil, and then he put his opponent in jail, just like Joe did. That's how they define a free and fair election. Progressive, communists, Democrats, pretty much the same now. 68% of Americans think we're on the wrong track. 80% of undecided voters think we're on the wrong track. 81% of undecided voters disapprove of Joe Biden. So think about that for a second, Ted. Yeah. Right? If you assume that the Trump people and the Biden people have made up their mind with usually there's a factor of about 10% when they say they're decided. I would say this election's been going on for so long, and these guys are so well known. It's probably about a 5% undecided. In other words, among the people that say Trump or among the people that say Biden, I would be surprised if 5% switch between now and the election. So where's the election going to get decided, the big numbers, among the undecided? Well, 8 out of 10 of those have decided the country's on the wrong track and disapprove of Biden. That's very bad news. They also believe that by 43% and 23%, that the economy and inflation, which Biden says doesn't exist, prices are just going up, but there's no inflation. Joe, that is inflation. And that's the biggest issue is still the economy and then illegal immigration. So unless he can make crushing the skulls of babies in the womb at 7, 8, 9 months the big issue, and overcome all of these other issues, we're finally going to get him out. But who knows what he can do in the final months that he has. He's been an awful president. Terrible thing for our country. We must have done something to offend God to get him. I mean, because I don't think we've ever had such an evil man. There are reports on the other side of the border that people are building up for major entries before Trump takes over. Well, they know. They know what we know. He's going to stop it right away and protect us.
Actions speak louder
and
than
throw them out.
That's it. Speaking of evil bad presidents, we have the most recent gaffe of quote President unquote Joe Biden. It's a sick one too. This one, Mayor. Maybe you want to set the stage.
Well, go ahead. I know what it is, but you go ahead, Ted. You tell us, because this is another one that's unthinkable, because it really hurts people that are very sensitive. Well, you tell it.
That's right. So Joe Biden, he was making some comments, paying the typical lip service where he talks about promising to bring back these hostages, but he doesn't go to bed thinking of these people. I highly doubt it. So he mentions during the speech that this gentleman is with them that day in the crowd, when in fact this gentleman is still being held hostage. We may not even know if he's alive. I don't know if this specific person is known to be alive, but as we all know, keep in mind, a lot of these hostages are actually deceased, and many of them were killed the day of. But watch the gaffe, and again, this just
please remember
this man, the cruelty of this man.
He's done nothing about these hostages, the American or the Israeli hostages.
That's right.
Rarely, if ever, mentions them. All he ever talks about is how terrible it is for the poor people of Hamas, Palestine. Not about the poor hostages, some of whom are being sent home in body bags now, and some of whom are Americans, like this gentleman. And this will give you an idea of how well he knows them, because you would not make this mistake if they were on your mind the way they were on Reagan's mind and Carter's. But of course, they were both good men. This is a very evil man. Let's listen to the evil man.
Just as we have freed hostages already. And here it is today is Goldberg Poland, and is still, he is not here with us, but he's still being held by Hamas. My administration is working around the clock to free the remaining hostages, just as we have freed hostages already. And here with us today is Goldberg Poland, and is still, he is not here with us, but he's still being held by Hamas.
We're back. We're back.
Now, if you cared about these hostages, there are so few American hostages. My goodness, you think he would know them. How do you think the hostage is there with you today? So now what is that? Is that proof that he belongs in a mental hospital and not in the White House? Or is he just a cruel son of a bitch? I mean, this is the guy who tells people his son died in the line of duty to people whose sons did die in the line of duty. And they hate him for doing that. I mean, he doesn't just lie. He lies at times in a very, very cruel way. Or searching around for the congresswoman that died a couple of days earlier and looking and recognizing her in the audience. I don't know, what's that? Cruelty? Senility? Delusional thinking? All of it means you shouldn't be in the White House. Meanwhile, that's essentially what the prosecutor said, who didn't have the guts to say he should be prosecuted. Basically, he said he's non-compos mentis, and does it based on the interview that he did with him over 2 days, and it's tape recorded. That's on video, in which he came to the conclusion that the guy doesn't have a memory sufficient enough to defend himself. How the hell can he have a memory? How can he lack a memory to defend himself and be expected to defend us? Do we count it all, Mr. Herr? Well, now we'd like to see it. We'd like to see how you made that conclusion. It's not classified material. It's not private material. You put out the transcript. You frighten the hell out of us by telling us that the president can't go to trial because he can't remember. Geez, he may not remember which button he's supposed to push. We have every right to see that, and the White House has no right to cover it up, and that's what they're doing. They're refusing to let the American people see him perform, and therefore make a judgment if they want their children imperiled by this president. I don't think they should be allowed to get away with that. I think the American people should flood the White House with calls and.
That's right. So.
What a shame. What a shame. What a shame. What a shame that this happened to us. And I know how it happened to us. It didn't happen to us. They did it to us. They did it to us by defrauding us in two ways. One was to hold back the hard drive that contained conclusive evidence of $30 million in crime, most of it committed with our biggest enemies, China and Russia, and to some extent Ukraine, because it just so happens that we are compromised in two of the places where we need freedom of action in the best interest of the American people, China and Ukraine. You think when Zelensky asks him for money, Biden can say no? Zelensky's got all the other pictures that I don't have. I only have a hard drive of one computer. You got to believe the Ukrainians were collecting all of it. They knew what a pervert he was. Now, those pictures are much worse than you can possibly imagine. They also prove that he knew all the foreign contacts. He was involved with them. He got half the money that Hunter got. He was involved in the business deals. Well, yes, Ted.
Go ahead. Well, we've got some relatively breaking news. It's new today. We want to get your reaction. This is a lot of good work being done by, I believe her name is Julie Kelly.
Oh, Julia Kelly, of course, she did a great job on the January 6th people. Yeah.
She's great, and she's done some research and some digging on the raid that happened at Mar-a-Lago over the documents dispute, the documents case, right? And what she has uncovered, and I want, as someone who's worked at the DOJ, you've worked closely with FBI, you're the FBI Man of the Year, all this stuff. I want to get your reaction to this because people are furious. I am as well, and I want to know if this is well-placed anger. What she has discovered is that the FBI and the groups that were planning this raid were authorized to use deadly force when necessary, and people are just basically translating this into a potential
Deadly
situation where they're going
force?
to kill the former president.
Pick up presidential papers.
Okay, so you're just as
I mean, that
how dangerous is that?
Maybe we should find out when they sent the Gestapo, like FBI agents, in on Papadopoulos and Roger Stone. Were they authorized to use deadly force?
We should
Against these extraordinarily dangerous people, George Papadopoulos and Roger's very, very dangerous people. Or how about
dangerously well dressed? Maybe.
I mean, how about the people who protest abortion get arrested now by the anti-Catholic Attorney General, the guy who hates Catholics, who had a whole big plan, to put us on a terrorist list if we go to the Latin Mass. So they arrest the abortion people who are just protesters, and they bring the Gestapo troops in. I was very fortunate when they raided me. Well, they weren't arresting me. They were just raiding me. They didn't have any Gestapo people in my hallway. I don't know. I wasn't at my law office when they raided my law office. They may have had some Gestapo people there. I should ask.
But the tactics that they were prepared to use at Mar-a-Lago, this is in the writing. This is part of their contingency operations. Should Mar-a-Lago guest reception be unwilling to provide a list of occupied guest rooms, FBI search team will knock on each guest room door to determine occupation status. I mean, this is the sort of stuff I'm just envisioning this, right? Over a documents dispute. That would be, and I don't think this was ever done, but they were prepared to do that. And so is this standard operating procedure where they play out the contingency operations, or is that intended?
I mean, I would imagine that sounds like if you're carrying out a raid in a
rescue somebody,
a terrorist facility
where time is everything,
not in a home or a club or a. Look,
disturbing stuff. What we're reading.
They're sick people. The Biden people are sick people. When you talk to them, you realize they're sick. Please don't get their sickness. Please, our country's been ruined enough. It can be hard enough to take it back. Let's not go any further. I wish it could stop now. They're deteriorating the institutions of this country, the things that make this country great, because they don't believe in this country. You can tell the Democrats hate this country. They no longer, or at least the ones at the very top who are so crooked. They've been bought off by either communism or money or power or all three. And this is extremely, extremely, extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, China is doing one of the biggest military buildups in the history of the world. They have a larger navy than the United States of America. And we have, based on inflation, cut our military budget. Maybe that's what China bought, huh? They certainly must have bought him giving up the Bagram Air Base 400 miles from China, because no president would do that who was loyal to the United States. We had an air base in Afghanistan, 400 miles from China. The mere fact that we were leaving Afghanistan, and another general today talked about how he warned Biden not to do it, and to do it in staged releases, not the way he did it, by taking out the troops before the civilians, so the civilians had no one to protect them, by leaving behind $85 billion worth of arms, some of which were probably used against the Israelis and against Americans. and then giving up an air base 400 miles from China. You base and withdraw from Afghanistan. And we have air bases in a lot of places where we don't occupy the place. And an air base 400 miles from China is worth its weight in gold, isn't it? For America. How much is it worth for China to get rid of it? Probably not all the 21 or 31 billion. 5, 10 of it maybe. He's in their pocket. Never says anything bad about them. Yeah, he's messing around with tariffs, but he's not going to do it in the long run. Not going to hurt his paymaster. How is it that we have a man in the White House? And even if you believe his bullshit, that he didn't get any of the money, even though his son says he did, how do we have a man in the White House whose family got $21 to $31 million from our biggest enemy just a few years ago? And whose name was on the door of a partnership with Chinese communist spies? I mean, Joe Biden's name was on the door. Well, you see how he's given us away. Let's stop it. Let's end it. Let's get ready for a big, big election. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this goes forward as we approach the conventions.
That's right, Mayor. And do you support the notion of, so Peter Navarro's in jail, but he wants to get, he's scheduled to get out of jail about the same time as the RNC convention. And he wants to fly from prison to the RNC convention, which we plan to be at, where he will then speak to the American people. Would you support something like that?
Well, I would.
Yeah. That's a dumb question.
I consider Peter a very good friend and a great patriot.
Did you work together in the White House?
Yeah, we worked particularly on the 2020 election, the thing that ABC banned me from talking about.
Oh. Should we not say it in case they're listening?
No, we should say it from the rooftops.
Yes, of course. We can say it louder, which is what you do.
The only way to protect us against its happening again is to talk about the techniques that they used. Also, particularly to talk about the new evidence that's come out that vindicates the president's position. He's virtually been totally vindicated in Georgia if you look at that latest revelation carefully, which was that there were 375,000 missing ballots. Well, that's about the number that we thought were printed illegally. And they were very almost obsessive about not letting anybody see the ballots. Nobody independent has ever seen the ballots that we maintain were the phony ballots to put them over the top. And one of the reasons I'm so sure they're phony ballots is because they would never show them. If they wanted to show the president that he was wrong about being cheated, all they had to do was produce the real paper and let him look at it, because every time they did a recount, it was like the same garbage over and over again. They're counting the same illegal ballots. Now 375,000 of them are missing. And the state Secretary of State said, that doesn't matter. That wouldn't change the result of the election. I mean, that's like a recording that he did the day of the election and just repeated it no matter what happened. The reality is, how does he know it didn't change the result of the election? He doesn't know where they are or what they are. How can you say they didn't change the result of the election if you haven't looked at them? How about having somebody look at them who can examine paper? I wouldn't mind looking at the ones that are left. I bet a few slipped in there too. You were terribly sloppy, particularly in Fulton County. You had an orgy of ballot counting going on and all over the state. So I would say that the new evidence in Atlanta is going to be combined with new evidence elsewhere that you're going to get to see. And we're going to be free to examine that to make sure it doesn't happen again. They are trying very, very hard to shut us up. And we're going to do the best that we can to get you everything that you need to know that's being suppressed, with a heavy emphasis on newly discovered evidence, because there are a lot of people out there looking for it. By the way, this particular revelation, which came out a week or so, more than that, a little more than that, about 2 weeks ago, led to removing Rauschenberg, who is the key to a lot of that Georgia indictment, getting him removed from the election commission, with the lieutenant governor saying that, was it because of his failures in the way he conducted elections? To which the lieutenant governor very, very boldly and correctly said yes. So there's somebody's starting to give up Rauschenberger. Couldn't happen soon enough. Well, tomorrow there's no trial. We don't have to watch a Soviet show trial tomorrow, or watch a liar puke his guts out on the stand. But who knows what's going to happen? I guess if any more mass murderers die, Biden will be sending condolence letters. Well, I hope people are enjoying the sports that are going on. The Rangers are going to go on. The Knicks got cut short, so I'm out of basketball. But I am in hockey. And, of course, the Yankees lost a game last night. That was the first one in a long time. They're doing great, and Judge is waking up. And they've got the second or third best record in baseball, I think. May have the best.
Yes, the Yankees do. So what would you say? What's your second sport, Mayor? We all know baseball is
football.
Yeah, I knew that, but I'm not sure everybody else.
Then hockey over basketball.
Oh, because your son?
No, I like it. I like hockey. I've always liked hockey a lot.
Really?
Yep.
We don't talk hockey that much. And the season's at an interesting time.
Yeah, I probably have seen more basketball because I played basketball. I never played hockey.
We watched a lot of.
And at one time, basketball was my third favorite sport. But as the Knicks got so bad, hockey took over. Now that the Knicks are doing better, maybe I'll go back to it, because I used to love boxing, but I don't like the present form of, kicking people in the head and that. I mean, that's street fighting, not boxing. Well, you stay tuned tomorrow for us on 3 o'clock, where we will be doing the Rudy Giuliani show. And then we'll be on tomorrow night with America's Mayor Live. Maybe we'll do something special tomorrow night. And you keep praying. We desperately need God back into America. We need him back. They chased him out, and we need him back. And they chased him out with our right of free speech and our right to fair trial, and if we happen to have conservative views. So we want to restore the America that was given to us by those who came before us, make it stronger and better for those who come after us. That's our mission. God bless America. Bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. It was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able